أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So I'm going to continue presenting summary for this book, uh, Justice of God by Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi. So today I will begin where Ayatollah Shirazi tells about how humans are nurtured through facing difficulties. So difficulties increase our willpower, just as um, iron is strengthened when placed in hot smelting. We become more experienced and more persevering. But in such situation, many people judge by what appears on the surface. They only see the bitterness and difficulties and ignore the positive and constructive effects. If you study the life of geniuses of the world, you will see that almost all of them suffered difficulties and great misfortunes. Here, Ayatollah Shirazi quotes a verse from Surah An-Nisa, verse 19. It may be that you dislike a thing, and God brings about through it a great deal of good. Then Ayatollah Shirazi discuss about how how people turn back to God through facing difficulties. He said, like, we have seen that our being has a goal or a purpose. Each and everything that we have, like our eyes has a purpose, our ear has a purpose, heart, brain, nerves, each of them have been created for a purpose. Even a fingertip has a philosophy behind it. Thus, how is it possible that our total being is without a purpose? One should look at one's sins and transgression in this light as well. In, in facing difficulties, in following God's command, one becomes familiar with one's ugly and evil deeds and will turn back to God. It is here that the part of difficulties and unforeseen events are in reality a divine blessing. So indeed, like painful events may lead us to become a better human being. Then Ayatollah Shirazi discussed how we understand the value of life through facing difficulties. He gives a nice example. He says, like, if you place an object in the middle of a room and give a strong light, a uniform light from all directions, and the object and the room are completely smooth, we will not be able to see the object due to the lack of contrast between light and shadow. When shadow is placed next to the light, the dimensions of the form is made clear. So the value of the gift of life is also like seen in the shadow of difficulties. So in general, a uniform kind of life, even the most comfortable kind of life, is tiresome and spiritless, and it is like death. So then Ayatollah Shirazi discuss about how difficulties are brought about by human beings. The disorder in the work of humanity is sometimes considered to be the fault or the disorder in the structure of creation. He gives an example, like when some earthquake strikes a city, it causes little damage. But in the rural areas, many people are taken as sacrifice and many lose their lives in the fallen shelters of their homes. The question then arises, like, what kind of justice is this? If the calamity is to be divided, why it is not divided equally? Why is the edge of sorrowful catastrophes always falls upon the deprived people? Why it is that the deprived people suffer the most with the contagious disease? So, but Ayatollah Shirazi says, like, if it is not for the fact that the rural people are abased and poverty stricken, it due to the oppression of the city people living in cities, or and if they were able to build strong, better homes for themselves, like in the cities, earthquakes would not have such an effect upon them. So, but when the houses are built of mud and stones and very little cement is used in building the homes, even a strong wind or a slight earthquake can hurt them. But what does this have to do with the God? The criticism should be made against the unbalanced situation and erroneous system of the society. We must arise and end these injustices to the society. We must we must try to remove the poverty and give the deprived their rights so that the such phenomena do not appear. But when the erroneous or the false social systems rules a society in the form of colonialism, or one person is given so much possibilities that even their cats and dogs have veterinary doctors and medications. Meanwhile, many humans do not even have the most basic necessities of life and healthcare for their children. Such unpleasant events are plentiful and have been seen by all. But instead of complaining about God in such situation, we should reproach ourselves. We have to tell oppressors not to be oppressive, and we have to tell the oppressed not to bear the oppression. So in summary, Ayatollah Shirazi says, like, we should not place the blame for our sins on the creation. When did God ever impose a system like this upon us? Where has he recommended this? He created all of us free, because of our being free is the key to the development and progress. But if it is misused if this freedom is misused and someone oppress each other, and this oppression then shows itself as imbalance in the society, unfortunately this error has affect many great people. So here Ayatollah Shirazi again quotes one more ayat, one more verse from Quran, from Surah Yunus, verse 44, that verily God will not deal unjustly with man in aught. It is man that wrongs his own soul. So next, Ayatollah Shirazi discuss about God's justice and eternal punishment. Here, Ayatollah Shirazi quotes two verses from Surah Tawbah, verse 68 and 72, where Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about the eternal punishment or eternal reward. So then the question arises, like, how can one accept that in one's lifetime of about 80 or 100 years, or one commits evil deeds, and then for eternity, like for millions of years, one is punished? How can this be reconciled with God's justice? So here Ayatollah Shirazi gives one nice example of, like, how, for example, like, it is possible that a person can kill an innocent person in 1 second, but according to the laws of countries, he is given life imprisonment. Here we can see that the time of the sin was just 1 quick second, whereas the punishment is for tens of years. No one considered this to be oppressive. Why? Because the question here is not of the days, weeks, months, or years. It depends upon, like, the kind of crime and the effect of the crime. Eternity in hell and eternal punishment only belongs to those people who have closed all the doors of salvation for themselves. They have drawn themselves in corruption, recklessness, and hypocrisy, so that the darkness of their sins takes their entire being. And as a result, that person takes the color of sin and kufr. So here Ayatollah Shirazi quotes one verse from Surah Baqarah, verse 81, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, like, those who seek gains in evil and girth round by their sins, they are the companions of fire. Therein they shall abide forever. So these kind of individuals have basically completely cut off their connection with God. They have closed all the doors of their salvations and well-being. So it is clear that if individuals are ignorant and the invitation of prophet is not known to them, and if they have committed evil deeds out of ignorance, they will not receive such a difficult punishment. It is also necessary to point out, like, the divine mercy of God is so great and extensive that large group of transgressors are given God's mercy, some by the means of intercessions, and some by means of forgiveness, and some because of small good deeds which they perform. God, by his greatness, gives reward to those small good deeds. And another group, after being punished in the hell for some time, will be purified and return to paradise due to divine mercy. So here I will end summary for this session. I will inshallah continue with this book for one more session next month.